She was never meant to rule, just meant to prank. One mob, one scroll, one mistake, and now she's an empress with chaos in her crown. And if heaven can be trolled, what's stopping you? This is the empress who trolls heaven. If this poem or tale stirred something in you, a memory, a dream, or a truth, our Ko-fi, Amazon, and Patreon links are in the description. Supports help us keep writing for you and for those you hold dear. The Empress Who Trolls Heaven, a royal fairy tale of chaos and love written by Sus Pacampara. In the beginning, there was no plan, only a map, a mistake, and the faint scent of temple incense clinging to the sleeves of a girl who had once tried to become a monk and failed spectacularly. Buell did not leave the temple so much as the temple exhaled and released her, just a leaf too unruly to stay swept. The elders had nodded gravely the day she arranged the offering stones to spell Stan Buddha and hosted puppet karaoke behind the shrine. She prayed by sleeping, meditated through rice cake theft, and only once replaced the holy water with soy sauce as a social experiment. Her enlightenment came not with stillness, but with slapstick. They told her she wasn't suited for the monastic life. She bowed thrice, bowed again for style, and left with a bundle of robes and an unfinished sutra rewritten into rap lyrics. The palace had no idea what it was letting in when she arrived in Solaria. She was not elegant like Yong, not radiant like Wayne, not even quiet like the flower girls who polished jade carvings. Buell cleaned by accident and broke by proximity. Her greatest diplomatic act was not setting the curtains on fire during tea service. The crown prince watched her like someone watching a cart teetering on the edge of a hill. She tripped into rooms and disarmed ambassadors by forgetting who they were. Jess, forever drawn to calamity with charm, invited her to mischief not out of romance but out of rhythm. One dull court morning, he proposed a prank. She would wear the empress's robe, sit upon the throne for 1 hour, and let the ministers do. She accepted without hesitation, wore the robe like a mop rag, adjusted the phoenix pins until they resembled the chicken's crest, and swaggered into court with all the poise of a cabbage. And the seal, ancient and divine, woke up. It glowed like dawn. The emperor, Jess's father, loved once and died mid-sip of ginseng tea. The room did not scream, it gasped in reverent panic. And just like that, the nation had an empress. Buell said oops. She would repeat it several more times throughout the week. She had no skill in statecraft. She did not read the documents she signed, assuming they were just long menus. When told to dance, she did a trot shuffle and learned from tavern buskers. And she addressed the Lord of Trade as Uncle Garlic for his scent. The nobles bristled, their wives chuckled, the eunuchs placed bets. But Jess stood beside her with quiet certainty. Even when the court called her a clown and the parchment shook in her hands, he taught her to read, not with sternness but with love, her margins filled with doodles and lines like, "Can I abolish Mondays?" She paled publicly, grandly, repeatedly. The court whispered, the nobles chuckled behind jeweled fans, and even the palace cat seemed to blink in judgment. But in the quiet between scrolls and spilled ink, she learned slowly, then strangely. Her reading voice sounded like a squirrel choking on a proverb. But she read, her dance grew less like tavern brawls and more like awkward constellations aligning. Once, she accidentally hosted a diplomatic dinner with no chairs, yet the ambassadors left smiling, full of street food and laughter. It wasn't grace, it was something better. She was making the palace human. They didn't love her at first, not in the way you could love someone, more like the way you noticed the cracked gong still ringing in an empty hall. But over time, the ringing became rhythm, a different kind of music. Young, who had spent her years measuring silence in teacups and strategy in silk threads, found herself chuckling at Buell's scrolls written in haiku and pancake recipes. No one had made her laugh in years. She began to set aside an extra seat during war councils, not for tradition but for chaos. Wheaton, used to music that swayed the court but never touched her, found herself humming Buell's absurd throat-rap melodies under her breath. She once caught herself doodling a carrot with sunglasses in her ledger and blamed Buell for infecting her with imagination. Jess saw it all quietly. He had chosen each of them with a secret plan, not for alliance or power, but for company. He knew Young needed someone to unravel her too tightly bound soul. We needed someone who'd steal her wine and leave her crumbs of affection. And Buell, she needed sisters who wouldn't leave. He gave them to each other, not perfectly, not even politely, but beautifully. In secret, the three sister wives met. Young ever composed, polished steel with her fingers and whispered of reforms. Wheaton poured wine and laughter into scrolls and negotiations alike. They had been handling state affairs since Buell tripped into sovereignty. They called themselves the sister wives of society, then added, for Maple Story 2 on a whim. No one in the empire knew what Maple Story was, least of all the Palas. But the wives spoke in strange tongues of PC bangs, patch updates, loot drops, and when questioned, waved their hands and said, "You wouldn't get it, it's divine revelation." Buell created a new court language. It consisted of eyebrow raises, motor jingles, and rogue scrolls written by her alter ego, Alter Buell. Alter Buell wore silk gloves, penciled the mole under her left eye, and drafted anonymous decrees written in rhyme. Her agents, the CIA or Court Infiltration Alliance, left mangoes and riddles in ministers' tea cabinets. Nobles feared her. Jess fed her more paper. They hosted the throat concert. Young sang with trembling grace, every syllable obeyed, drawn under moonlight. Wheaton moaned, jazz into the silence, her soul rapping the raptors. Buell rapped off beat and top script. She forgot to submit the performance form. Young won by default. No one dared call it a farce. Years passed like petals blown across a sill. The empire adjusted. Buell and Jess had a daughter who gave sermons to fish. Wheaton's twins staged palace uprisings with slingshots and poorly written constitutions. Young eldest wrote laws in crayon and signed her name as the real empress. Jess feared them all. He took to wandering at night, mumbling of goose staged by toddlers and dragons in diapers. Buell would kiss his cheek and promise he would survive the rain. "You survived me," she'd say. "The rest is just sandbox mode." They laughed louder than drums in the court square. The empire loved her. She knew them. She danced in the mud when the fields flooded, rewrote tax policy over grilled squid, and held audiences on a swing she'd tied to the plum tree. The seal never left her side, even when she pretended it was a coaster. The court stopped asking questions. The scholars gave up. The empire stopped wondering what a PC bang was and simply nodded along. Buell ruled not with precision, but with presence. She ruled not by edict, but by laughter. Her law was music. Her diplomacy was a duet with chaos. The chronicle scribes wept trying to describe her. One wrote, "She's not the empress, she is the event." And in the palace garden, where the moonlight often caught her mid-prank, she sometimes sat with her daughter curled against her, watching Jess argue with Young and Wheaton about bedtime diplomacy. She smiled and whispered into the air, "I trolled heaven, and heaven blinked first." The Troll Epilogue. It happened, as most things in Solaria did, entirely by accident. Buell had meant to send the thank you fruit basket to the neighboring province of Gojin. Instead, she sent the imperial banner, the royal seal, and the note that said, Nice rice fields. They're ours now. Loved the Empress. Gojin panicked, bowed, and declared themselves a vassal state. Nearby territories, fearing a sweep map-based conquest, did the same. The map, once a neat sprawl of polite borders, now shimmered with lines that curved towards chaos. In less than a week, the entirety of Southeast Asia, parts of Inner Mongolia, and the confused spice market in Vietnam declared loyalty to the empires. The palace staff did not notice until the dining hall menus changed to include satay, lumpia, and laksa. Just stared at the new imperial map laid out on the jade floor. Win blinked. Young sat down on her tea and muttered, "What did you do?" Buell adjusted her emperor's cap, actually a teacup, and stood atop the palace balcony like the general of the absurd. I expanded our borders through the divine art of miscommunication and stationary errors. Jess inhaled deeply. So what now? Win clutched her wine. The taxes are going to be insane. Young reached for her sword, muttering something about rogue provinces and diplomatic trials. But Buell, Empress of the 7 meals a day and Lady of all things that is questionable, turned to face the heavens and proclaimed, "We aim for world domination now." I already sent North America a postcard. It says, "Hey, you're next." The skies did not tremble, but somewhere a pigeon took flight with a crown-shaped envelope. And so begins the next chapter. This piece is dedicated to my dearest sunshine, Kim Yong-sun. Please show her your love and support on her channel, Solarcido. She's the heart behind so much of the light I share here. If you enjoy poems, short stories, and heartfelt journeys like this one, stay a while and see if any of my work resonates with you. I'd love for you to consider subscribing if you find a piece of your heart here. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what new story formats or poems you'd love to see. Your voice helps shape this growing storybook we're building here. Thank you for walking this world with me. Have a nice day.